Welcome to Track Talk Live with Doug Hodgdon and Chooch Rivard. My name is Leah, I'm your moderator today, and we are talking about unique tools for modeling work. I really like their mugs. We've got Mr. Clickety as usual, but now Chooch has a mug as well. Chooch, what's on your mug?
Well, this is for my Sioux Line friends watching out there, Graham, hopefully in Australia. There's my Sioux Line mug from one of our conventions.
Fantastic. We're going to get into some demonstrations. Oh, and a Sioux Line model over there. But before we dig into these unique tools that we can use for modeling work, I have just a quick announcement. If you haven't already done so, please go check out the Model Railroad Academy Community Layout Gallery. You can show off your work with the MRA community by sharing the photos of your layout. It's really easy to submit your photo or to just view the gallery. You can click the banner underneath your chat box, or if you're watching on Facebook, you'll find the link in the description. There's already about 200 photos in the gallery, so it's a really great time to check it out, add your own, and keep building this community gallery. Without further ado, we are going to hop into some demonstrations. I know there's some photos we can talk about. I've heard a rumor that I might even be able to try some of these things out today, so I'm going to toss it over to Doug and to Chooch, and I'll keep an eye out for some questions as they come in. At the end, we'll get through as many as possible as well. Here we go.
Okay, well, just as an introduction, I wanted to present this magazine here. This is my latest NMRA magazine, and I really like the photo on the front. This is a fellow named Gary Gross in St. Louis, and I don't know if you can see in the picture, he's got the headlights lit in the car. Ah. Very neat nice photo, and this is a layout that will be on the tours next summer in St. Louis. Anyway, I wanted to show that because it was new.
That's neat.
Now, I have a whole box full of tools here, so I'm going to let Leah pick one out.
Ooh, okay.
And see what she thinks about it.
Oh, ooh, dare I? Let's do this. This looks familiar to me.
Now, this is good if you want to do dental work at home, by the way.
Ah, yes, that's what I thought.
But it's also good for working on models or working on something where you can't lift it up or
okay.
You get under it. So it actually is like a dental mirror, but it's very handy for model work. So I think that's a unique tool, and I've had this for a long time.
You know, that reminds me of, I have situations on my railroad where as I have multi-levels.
Right.
And there's one level where there's not a lot of clearance, so when I have to, example, solder a piece of rail, I can't see the far side, the back side of it. A mirror, I've got a mirror, but something like that would be perfect to see the other side of the rail so I can see when my solder joint looks correct.
Now I also have a couple of other, there you go, these are other dental tools that
For those of you that
acquired.
really like to think about your trips to the dentist.
Yeah.
Novocaine is extra, you have to get that separate. But anyway, see, that one of them is kind of like a little pry tool.
Ah, yes.
And you can actually, you know, if you're trying to get under something and pry it up a little something tiny, even under maybe a piece of track or under a rail or something.
Yep,
and that one, of
that's
course,
perfect.
you can pick. If you want to clean something out, and so yeah, you can go down like this and just pick away. If there's a little piece of dirt and a crack or
Yes.
something, you know,
Switch
you can
points.
just something like that. Anyway, they're really handy.
Yeah.
Shall I pick another one?
Sure, keep going.
Ooh, let's do this one. Okay.
Oh, we were talking about that.
Now,
What is this?
Aside from being an antique, because it came from my mother, this is an old-fashioned jar opener, and I just used the smaller piece in there. And I actually didn't bring a jar. I should have. But anyway,
it gets a little small.
Bob's got a
You
jar.
could, well,
So-
if this paint, if this was stuck, a jar of paint, this is actually my glue, but you'd use the smaller.
Yeah, and then the
Yes.
jar wrench, an old-fashioned jar
Can't get it
wrench.
open. Oh, there it came. There it
But
is.
I mean, I always wipe off the top of the rim of my paint bottles when I'm done to try to prevent sticking. But anyway, sometimes they stick, and especially
Which is a
for
good
some
idea.
reason, my flocals, my old flocals,
the old
they get sticky. So
scale coat. I use a lot of. The jars are bigger, but many times I've got a monkey wrench in the basement hanging there, and that's a little overkill. But something like that would be perfect.
Yeah. Well, thanks to my mom, I have that.
Oh,
Now,
what else have we got?
well, this is actually a real handy tool. It's a two-way level.
Like a level.
Let me hold it up. It's called a Johnson 125, and I bought this online, but they've been around for a long time. And I use this for laying track because it gets you level in both directions. Or if you're sitting, like say, a base of a building down, you can check your level in two directions at once.
Oh, yeah.
So that is a
Really
very
helpful.
handy tool that I have in my toolbox.
Very nice.
Ah, yes. Oh, I like it. I like things to be nice and neat, and I do see a comment that's already come in from Edgar J. I like the way all of the tools are laid out and handy. I agree. They're all here, ready to go. I walked into a playground today.
Well, Doug
you want to show something now?
Well, Doug and I were talking about this today, for doing this today, and I thought, Doug, I'm just going to bring the tools I use most often, and I'm not going to straighten them out. This is just how these appear on my workbench, and just some common tools that for example, here's a safety pin for baby safety pin for diapers, right? It's like one of the things I use this a lot is for center punching when I'm going to drill small holes. For grab irons, lift rings, to center punch, put the dimple in the plastic with the safety pin works perfect for that. And then you can take your, another tool I'll show here, guys. I found this many years ago. I discovered this is my small drill. And the concept of this, you buy their power supply. Well, I use an old transformer, an old railroad train transformer, and you hook it up. And the advantage of this, it can go super slow speed. This brand of this was Mini Craft. I think they're still around. But I hook it up to my old transformer. Very slow, because in plastic, you don't want the drill to be going fast or you'll just melt it as you drill. This can go super slow, and it's great for drilling multiple holes, like for lift rings and grab irons.
So you can put a pretty small bit in there.
Yes, a very small, like a number 77.
Take a 77?
Come
Okay,
down
number
to,
80?
yes,
Yeah.
and 80 even.
Perfect.
Yep. So there's that one.
Oh, that's great. I saw another neat one in here that I wanted to pull out. This looks like it has a magnet on it.
That is, and it's a telescoping magnet tool. You can put that out there just to show you can pick it up. But I've actually used that in spots where
Oh,
it's,
that's perfect. Look at
there
that.
again, if
Yep.
you something metal in your layout and you can't reach it,
Oh, I see.
so Leah, you can pull it out and extend it. See?
Ooh.
Look at there.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes. You really could reach.
yeah. And model railroaders always have spots they can't reach in their layout. It's kind of just a typical thing. We do that.
Now, where would you get one of these?
Well, I've had that for a long time. I would guess a tool place maybe like Micromark.
That would be a perfect
Does it have a
place.
brand name on it?
Let's see.
Nope, I guess not.
Nice.
Nope, sorry, I can't remember where I got it, but
That's okay.
It reminds me of
Telescoping
it.
magnet.
Reminds me of a radio antenna for my 8-band radio.
yeah. Well, you could probably use it for an antenna too.
Yeah,
you could like
probably
purpose.
could. Yeah.
Hey.
Hey,
Ooh, love the drill trick. Yes,
Yes.
Robert.
Good.
That was a great
Very
trick.
good. Yes.
Super useful.
And of course your pin. Let's see. I've got my trusty pin vices here. Like I said, I did not organize this. I'm going to bring it. Just tweezers. These are my trusty. This
Oh,
is
yeah.
just a perfect pair. I don't know where I got them from. I just keep when I misplace them. It drives me nuts because they just work perfect. They're the perfect size for decals, and it's just a nice pair of tweezers, and I really like them. Let's see, where's my, here's my drill bit. I've got a pin
Yep.
vise. They call this a pin vise.
Yep,
I'm using
yep.
this all the time. Pin vise.
that's one of those swivel cap, right? Because those are really handy if it has a swivel cap.
Here's
on it.
another small pin vise with a
Yep.
tiny drill bit. I've always have that chucked up in that. This is a number, like a 256 drill bit.
Right,
Like
right.
a number 1/16.
Tap-
That's
tap
the perfect
bit, yeah.
size. 'Cause I also have somewhere in here my tap for drilling, for couplers.
Oh, right,
For
right.
256 screw. That works perfect. So I always have that ready to go in my little box here.
All right, we do have a question that has come in.
Okay.
And I think it might lead into something that you both mentioned that you wanted to talk about anyway. So this is from a guest asking, what is the best type or brand of insulation foam sheet to use as a base or for scenery? There's some variety out there, but I haven't heard this discussed. Ready to buy.
That's
Thanks.
perfect. That's
you wanna do
exactly
this
what
now?
we were going to talk about.
Well, I brought this little sample
Nice.
with. This is a rigid foam, called pink foam, but I've seen it in blue too. It must be a
I've seen
different
blue.
brand, yeah. The white styrofoam foam doesn't really work good. It's got all those little beads in it.
Beads.
You try to cut it, and the beads go everywhere, and all that. So
This is kind of nowadays state of the art using the pink foam. You know, with the Pink Panther when you go into Home Depot and buy various thicknesses of the sheets. And I like how you can do the scoring and snapping with this too.
so
like,
here's
like styrene.
I brought this is a bread knife, a serrated blade, if you can see the blade there. And so it works great for cutting foam. So we'll let Leah try just scoring it. You can score it just by doing that.
Drawing a little line with the knife?
Score it and break it, and then we'll also
Okay.
try sawing it.
There, keep going, like that's perfect. See, now you should be able to snap
Ta-da.
that.
I'll
You
try
know,
If I
snapping it.
fold
Yep,
it?
you should be able to snap it just like, yep, keep going, yeah, it'll work. Perfect, and it snaps right up. Nice clean cut.
Nice clean edge.
Yep, nice clean edge.
First try. Look at
Nice.
that. I was coached well.
Yes.
Now, the second thing is, like, say you have a piece of this foam on your layout and you want to make, say, an embankment down to the track or down to something. So then you can use this knife as a saw
Yes.
and saw down, just, want to try it, Leah?
Ooh, sure.
Saw down at a 45-degree angle to get an embankment.
At a 45-degree angle. I'm glad I warmed up before I came today.
Yeah, right.
Takes a little bit of muscle here.
Going, but the serrated knife is nice.
There
Now-
we go.
Now you get the idea
Very nice.
there, and of course, once the foam is shaped, then you can adjust, you can fine tune it when you do your plaster scenery or whatever you do over the top. So this is just your base, and
Now, if we want to talk, if Nate wants to take my computer in the control
Oh, yeah,
room,
okay.
I can show a couple little slides here from now this is last summer. Remember last summer? Oh, it was nice in my driveway then. It's not like this now. And I was getting this ready for St. Louis. I have a couple of modules, bridge modules that I wanted to take to St. Louis. And to bridge the two modules, there's a piece of track they call this the High Line in Northeast Minneapolis. I thought the best way, I'm going to use the pink foam. 40 years ago when I built the bridge modules, I built those on wood. But nowadays you use the pink foam. So next shot I'm going to go to here. There's where my track and my road bed, that's just Woodland Scenic's road bed, the foam road bed. And I've used the tacky glue to attach the track. And the pink foam, there's the embankment that Doug and Leah was just showing us. And I even use a little Durham rock hard putty for the, put a little filler in there. And there's the finished piece that's bridging my two modules.
then what did you use for road bed, Bob? That looks
And
like,
that's all I used was the Woodland Scenics. And you know, you use that like PL200, it's like a tacky glue and it dries. That's what people use now for applying the road bed and their track now.
so you're using Woodland Scenic's road bed?
Yes.
And then you just glued it down?
I
with,
just glued it down with
Okay.
the glue. Yeah, and that's it for that. Yeah, perfect.
Right.
Perfect.
So pink foam, thumbs
Yeah.
up from both
Yes,
of
that's
you.
that's the state
Yep.
of the art now.
And it comes in different
that
thicknesses.
people are
too.
using. Yes.
So this just happens to be the 1 inch, but you can get it in different thicknesses.
And the 1 inch is nice. That's nice
Yeah.
to work with, and you can, like I was showing on my module, you can stack it,
Yeah, you can layer it up.
layer it. Yes.
You can layer it up, and then do even more cutting and carving with it. So, and then I use the panel glue like you to
Yes.
glue it together. And then I just put some, even though the screws don't hold real well, I just put some like drywall screws into it to hold it together until the glue dries.
I've done that too.
If you
Yep.
go too hard with it, the screws will just strip out.
But the screws,
But
I was using the
yeah.
wood screws in this on
Yeah.
this module that you see until
Yeah.
it dries. And if you want, you can leave the screws in.
Yeah, I
You
just
can take
normally
them
just
out.
leave it in, but
Right. That's perfect.
anyway, that's a good idea for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Is
so
there
what else we
anything
got?
else that you brought to do some demonstrations, or gonna let some questions filter in
Okay.
that we can get to at
Nice.
the end of the demonstrations? We run all the way until 3 p.m. Central
Yep,
Time, so
keep
we've got some
sending
time.
them in. Well, here, let me show this first. Now, this is an example of something. It's not really a tool, but it's a product. These are coffee stir sticks.
Oh, yes.
And I bought these online, although if you go to your local coffee shop, you can probably
Just grab a
manage to
few.
walk out with some. But I use these all the time. They're tremendous. And they're sort of, the wood itself is sort of it's a rough wood. It's not a smooth wood. So if you're doing an old weathered building or freight dock or something like that, it's great because you can really see the grain. And when you stain it, it really looks good. I mean, sometimes
absolutely.
like your commercial wood, northeastern, or it actually sometimes can be too smooth.
Yes.
And so this is great.
Well,
so
I'm thinking right now, when I build my flat car lumber loads, that would be perfect, especially for the outside of your loads, for the to simulate the wood stacked up on a lumber load.
Well, and if you look around, these things come in different sizes. Now, here's an example of just a different size one. It's thicker, and so.
I've used some of those before, that size before, for crafts.
Yeah, they're real handy, and the price is right.
Yes.
So now this is leading me into this. Now this is
A hockey puck.
a hockey puck.
Yes.
And what I use that for is if I'm cutting little pieces of wood. This is a perfect example. Now, Leah, do you want to try try cutting across here with the
Just cutting
with the knife?
across?
Yeah, just try cutting that wood. Hold it down on the.
Okay. Ooh,
Yeah, there's supposed to be a new blade in there. It should cut.
taking some effort.
Yeah.
Whoop. Cutting into the hockey puck. I'm starting
okay.
to see
Yeah.
why you use this hockey puck.
Well, it's heavy too, so it's got to
There
go.
it is.
Well, there you go. I thought
And
that was a
it's-
new blade. That should have cut quicker than that. But anyway, you got a different blade?
Yeah, let me try. This might have
Okay,
a
you
new,
try it.
sharper
Yeah,
blade here.
yeah.
But I like that. Then that saves wear and tear on your blade
Yep.
because it's going into the rubber.
Just hardwood, I guess, huh?
Yep. There we go.
Very
Yeah.
sturdy.
Sure, that's
There you go.
that's to be expected. That's. I can't
we
tell
have
you
a-
the times I lose pieces on the floor and I'm down there with a flashlight and.
Now, so my next thing kind of goes goes together with all of this. This is a sharpening block. And I use this for many things. I can actually use it if I want to, here's a piece of copper tubing I brought in. If I want to use that to my block to just sand something smooth like this on the end, so I can use it to get a flat surface. But then also, if I'm using my one of my X-Acto knives and I think it's maybe dulling down, then I keep this right on my workbench, and I can extend the life of my X-Acto blade. And then the same with this one. Just
Give it a little.
run it across in both directions. And it just, like I say, it extends the knife of the X-Acto blade.
Yep, not bad. Nice.
Perfect. What else do we have?
Well, what do you think this is for?
Okay, I'm gonna guess. This looks a little bit like, here, let me put it on top of the puck, a vise of sorts, but it also looks like it's got a circular element inside there. Does it cut
That's
things?
nice.
Well, yes, it's actually a small tubing cutter.
Oh,
Let me,
okay.
let me
yeah,
open
yeah.
it up. And
I was trying to use all my context clues.
Right?
so, as you can see here, this is actually made by K&S. You unscrew it and put the tubing in there, and then tightening
Tube cutter. Now I understand.
the cutting disc in there, and then spin it around. I mean,
Right, yeah.
plumbers use a big version of this when they're doing copper pipe in your house. You know, but this is real good. I mean, it'll even take a piece of tubing like this.
Ooh, that's pretty
You
substantial.
know, you can put it in there. Put it in like so, and then tighten it down, like so.
Yes.
And you hold onto the tube and just keep spinning the tool around until the Sorry about my finger, by the way. I slipped on the ice, Minnesota.
We have plenty of
Yes.
it.
Anyway, keep running this around, and then eventually it'll cut through the tube. So, and you can cut
Oh,
small
I see
tubes.
it starting, yeah.
Yeah, you can cut small tubes up to about this size with it. So, anyway, very handy,
nice.
very handy tool. And then these tubes I used for. I brought a little bigger one just to show. You can make little fuel tanks out of these, or put ends on it and use it for.
Oh,
Oh, I see.
perfect for G scale.
Oh, we didn't mention our cutting mat either, did we?
We should. Look at
I
that.
brought my cutting mat. It's a little bit used here, you can see, but I really like this. This is a cutting surface. You can cut right on it without damaging
They,
your workbench or your
they call them
blade.
self-healing cutting mats where the knife blade marks won't even show. They'll automatically go back. You can't even tell that you've cut on them.
And I like these diagonals. It's got a 45s and a 30-60. And when I'm cutting strip wood, if I need to cut it at one of those angles, I can just lay the strip wood right on there and use the lines as a guide when I cut. So,
Yeah, that's perfect
Oh,
for that.
really great.
yeah, that works pretty neat. So I wanted to show you that. You got something else, Bob?
Well, I could have Nate take, we always like to talk about what we've been working on lately, and I could have Nate take my little slide presentation here.
Oh, yes.
And I can describe, there's my latest HO locomotive project, a Rock Island GP18. And I finally finished this. I have my sound decoder installed, and it's pretty cool. I'm real happy with it. And I'm trying to simulate the weathering I see here in one of my Rock Island color guides, Rock Island diesels. And we can go to the next one, Nate. There's the finished engine at the Invergrove engine terminal in St. Paul.
Looks beautiful.
Down on my
I like
railroad.
the stripes on the doors.
And one of the things it's nice to talk about, I figured we'll kind of mention today, is your eye sometimes doesn't pick up right away what the camera lens will see. If you take a photo of something, you'll see the photo. It's like, boy, I sure didn't notice that. For one example is the weathering on my engine house there. So we'll go to the next shot here, Nate. Example, I was inspired by a shot I saw taken by the late Jim Henshaw. And Greg Smith and Jim took shots down here back in the 70s. And it was gunky and greasy. You didn't even want to walk around down there. And when I'm looking at my photo, I'm seeing this engine house needed more weathering to represent the prototype. You see the prototype shot that Jim took on the left there. It's got some really interesting weathering patterns. So I'm using some raw umber, burnt sienna, and I'm going to try. All I'm doing is doing a wash, and there I'm applying some darker colors to simulate some of the exhaust that came out of those engines.
Nice.
And now it's capturing more faithfully the way that engine house looked back in the 70s. And now I did this yesterday. I decided I'm going to simulate more of the oil grease globs that you saw down there. Boy, it doesn't sound fun walking around down there, but that's
Yeah, really.
But he described it, and that's when you see a photo. It's like they say, "Yep, that's how it was down there." Railroad guys have commented.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, that's how it was down there. So I'm using Scale Coat 2 Black, which is shiny, and that'll give a nice effect for the
oil that's all
drippings.
over the place. Yeah,
And so I did this
Yeah.
yesterday, Doug, while it's a nice Sunday afternoon, nothing else to do.
In those
And
days,
there's-
people didn't care about
No.
the oil on the ground.
Exactly. Now
Yeah.
here I'm kind of feathering things together with powders, different shades of gray and black weathering powders. So it's not so stark. And there's the finished product. I'm taking a couple of shots of some locomotives there last night. So
Now,
this
did
was
you-
just last night. And there's Jim Henshaw's wonderful shot he took back in the 70s down here.
Did you make that
And
same
there's
color?
Yes, I scratch built that from
Oh, I'll have
K&S
to talk
brass.
about that sometime.
K&S
That
brass,
looks
and
great.
that's exactly how that looked now.
Yeah,
And there's the side-by-sides. I love when Nate does the side-by-sides.
yeah, yeah.
And there's my, on the right, my finished engine house. There's Jim's shot. And that's my inspiration, is prototype shots. And there's another shot I took. Greg Smith posted a shot of some ex-Rock Island Jeep 7s. And the Rock got a hold of these back in the early 70s. And of course, poor Rock Island discovered they couldn't MU with other engines, so they were stuck with like 10 of those things. So
Nice.
That's what I've been working on.
Oh, that's been busy.
Yes, I'm always working on something.
Is there any other demonstrations that we have going, or would you like to take a couple questions
Oh, do you want to,
now?
well, we can take some questions and then go back to some other things.
We'll
Very
do a
cool.
quick question. We've got one in from Jorge. This is great. My son has grown to love model trains. He will be 4 soon, and I have gotten into the hobby along with him. It all started with my mom's 1950s American Flyer train set when he was 2, and now I have started a train table for him. Well, I guess I'm loving it too. It sounds like you are.
That's how it happens.
Good work, yep.
Yep.
The table is a 54-inch by 72-inch rectangle. I've ordered grass mat and some landscaping, road painting supplies. I have a basic track layout in mind that I will drop and post here for feedback. Great idea.
Perfect.
Always feedback here in the comments. But 2 main questions that Jorge would like to get some help on. 1, any tips or tricks for the beginner as I build the layout, things that I should think about that maybe I'm not. And 2, what track or road bed should I use for the layout? I have a decent amount of standard American Flyer track, but no turnouts yet.
So we're talking American Flyer, standard old-fashioned American Flyer, it sounds like here.
I assume he's still using his American Flyer and wants to set that up. I actually have my old American Flyer at home. You're limited on a board that size, and I can't.
Right, what was the size again we're talking? Is it 4x8? Did
It's
you say, or-
54 inches by
okay.
72 inches, a
Okay.
rectangle.
I can't
Okay.
remember exactly what the curve radius is in that Flyer track anymore, but basically it is designed to fit on a more or less a 4x8 board, and so. You probably get an oval on there, and then some spurs on the inside, or maybe a secondary track on the inside. There actually is a Kalmbach book called 101 Track Plans. Remember that old book?
Oh, I've got it. Yeah.
If you can find it online, it's a real old one, but it had a lot of what they call tin plate track plans in it.
Oh, that would be perfect. Yes.
So the American Flyer, if you want to find any new supplies, you usually have to find it on eBay or at railroad flea markets or something like that.
Flea market, there you go,
Yeah.
perfect. You see a lot of Lionel and American Flyer at these flea markets that we go to. The Woodbury, the Fairgrounds one. There's one coming up in Coon Rapids. But the neat thing about, of course, American Flyer, the 2 rails, realistic. Lionel had the 3 rails, but guys are into that. It reminds them of their childhood. They set it up, it runs, it makes the noise. There's just something about it. But American Flyer always a little smaller than Lionel, so it's probably going to fit better on a smaller piece of
Yeah, and it's good.
tabletop.
It's good for a young son. I would say
Oh, it's
like
perfect.
HO is
That's-
probably a little too small.
Because
but if
that's
you're-
what when I was a
yeah.
kid, that was the first thing I got was the Lionel, the proverbial Lionel train set.
Yeah, I'd say if
from
his son
there.
is 4,
That's-
they can
American
grow
Flyer is
into HO trains, and I would probably recommend that as your son gets older. But this is great to get started with and to try it out. Now you
Yes.
can use cork road bed. You can still buy a big scale cork road bed and use that as an underlayment for the track. Starting out with a grass mat, and there are other
That's
scenery
good.
supplies that you can get at various hobby stores and online and so on. So. Another thing would be to go to visit a local club or a train show in your area and see what other modelers are doing to get ideas.
That's a good idea. I know the one they have at the fairgrounds, they have operating railroads set up there in various scales.
And of course, check the Model Railroad Academy site, because there are a lot of how-to videos on the site.
And you're right, that's a good idea, a good example. Bring your son over to the Twin Cities Model Railroad Club over in the Midway District.
We don't know what town he's in.
Say, oh, that's true.
Yeah.
But if you're here,
Yeah.
If you're here,
Why
stop in
not?
to see that. But a local railroad club, perfect.
all right. Well, I was hoping that that'll be some good information for
Yeah,
you to get
sure.
started on. That's really great. Thanks for sending in the question. Oh, and we have a comment. Peter and Ben viewing on YouTube say, working on decaling a locomotive now. This is perfect to watch while working.
Nice.
All right.
Hope it's going well.
All right.
Scale, does he say? What,
He does not mention the scale,
Okay.
just having this on as a little inspiration, I
That's
guess.
nice. Good idea.
Now, actually, you can show this, another tool I brought.
Absolutely.
This is well, you had a cross-action tweezers too, didn't you, Bob?
This isn't, mine's not cross action, but you have a cross action. I
This
see it
is
works
great
as a
when
clamp,
I'm
doesn't it?
decaling. I use a little cup. I actually have here's an example of a cup for the decals. I put the decals in there. I don't want too deep a cup because then it just gets to be too much water and the decals are in there too far. But I use this cross-action tweezers to grab the decal, to lift it
Nice.
out. And then, so it'll hold it until you put it on the model, and then you
Yes.
can let it loose. And so I like these cross-action tweezers. They're very handy. Everybody should have one of those in their
Yeah,
toolbox.
they work as a clamp also. You can clamp onto the decal and
Yep, I have,
I like
well,
that.
I actually have this too. I have an assortment of these. These are actually heat sinks
okay.
for soldering, but they also work as a cross-action tweezer.
Oh, I see.
Speaking of decals, this is another little scissors I like to have on hand for just a little pair of scissors for cutting decals.
A little smaller, yeah.
Different sizes is always nice, right? Put that back in here. Oh, another thing I use a lot, you guys, is it's an old pair of rail nippers. But this is, now you don't want to cut wire, like hardened wire with a rail
Right,
nipper.
right.
But these, it doesn't matter. They're ones that I'm not going to worry about getting a clean cut on a piece of rail anymore. So I'll use them for various things, cutting wire, and I'm always looking for my old rail nippers. I'm always using these, cutting little pieces of metal.
Okay,
Ooh,
now, here you go,
Saw
Leah.
this sitting here.
Yeah. Now, this came from a sushi place.
yes. I'm very familiar
Nice.
with these at a sushi place.
Can you use them? Do you know how
I'm
to-
pretty good with
And
them.
then these, of course, are chopsticks.
Can I pull these apart?
Well, certainly.
All right.
Now, whenever you come across these wooden things like this, they're very handy for all kinds of things. Now, I showed a car, many shows back, I showed a carload that I made with using the chopsticks because it's neat because they're tapered and they look like a telephone pole.
Real telephone.
Oh,
poles.
yes.
And you can stain them, cut them to length, and they'll work. You can have a pole just about any size. And so I did it on my S scale, but it would certainly work on HO.
All right.
That's
So then these are
perfect.
slightly different, little rounder. The ones that I had, you have to snap them apart. Is there anything that you use them differently for?
I mean, this can be for other timbers and things just
Ah.
because they're square. And there again, they're kind of a rough wood. So if you want something that's old and weather beaten, then you can use the rough wood and stain it and really bring the grain
Now,
out.
using this, the chopsticks is perfect because that real telephone poles I use dowels, but I like this concept because they do actually taper
Yep.
like a real telephone pole.
And now this is just a plastic straw that I got over at probably a fast food place. But, and I also use these on a flat car load. You can use them for culverts
Nice.
or flat car loads, or I've used them for stacks on buildings. So very handy, and
perfect size.
the price is right. And then, just as long as we're on straws,
Regular
this is a
straw.
flexi straw.
Yes.
And these are great because you can actually use them if you want to actually show like a pipe elbow in something. You can bend them, and it really looks great for. I've used them on oil refineries and that kind of thing, or water piping above ground, that sort of thing. So that
It's the perfect size too
the
for that.
flexi straw is just perfect. Okay, now I'm going to go on to something. Have you got anything else you want to show, Bob, or do you want me to go to something?
Oh, go ahead, Doug. I'll look for something here. While
This is, I wanted to show this, and it was Christmas time, and,
Oh, the tinsel.
and I remembered this. Now, what would we use tinsel for? Let me think. My wife had these, so I actually had to borrow these from my wife, and I could use a little bit of it, but actually what I do is when I'm doing a waterfall, and we'll show this, I want to do the dioramas we're talking about, Bob.
Oh, sure.
Down the road. I actually take bundles of this and glue it into a waterfall. If you can
Oh,
see
it's
that.
pretty shimmery.
And depending on the waterfall, it can be thick or thin or whatever you're doing. So I glue this on the top and the bottom of the waterfall. Let me see if I can get, so you can see this better here, like this. And you can see it is real shimmery. And then, as I glue that down, I go over with
A gloss medium.
layers of gloss medium. Just keep brushing it down, and then so the tinsel becomes encased into the gloss medium. Then you can add other colors, like white for foam. And that sort of thing, especially at the bottom. You can actually use tinsel on the bottom and kind of roll it up, and then if you want to have a lot of foam.
Oh, like the bubbling.
Yeah, a lot of foam in the bottom, and I just love it. It's so sparkly.
We were talking about, when I first saw that, I was thinking maybe you were going to show how to do scrap loads in Gons, because that actually would work very well for that, and you could paint it, airbrush it different colors. That would be a perfect scrap load.
Maybe cut it up into a lot of little pieces or something.
Yes.
Yeah, anyway, I wanted to show that. That's kind of one of my favorite things for doing waterfalls.
Well, there's so many ways to model water. That's a common question. How to do waterfalls, how to model water. That's a whole topic onto its own. It really is.
This is another simple tool that I brought. It's a ribbon rail track gauge. This particular one is HO, and they make all sizes, straight and curved. And I've used these things for years and years and years and years to lay track and get it true. Just goes down the center of the track.
Oh, that's perfect.
Spike your track down.
Keep it
And if you
straight.
have a particular radius, I like to draw an arc for my radius before I lay the track, so then I can just follow that center line of that track
Center line,
radius all the way
yes.
around, and then I can use my radius gauge of the correct radius, and then I know everything's perfect, especially when you have a rail joint on a curve and you have flex track. How the rail joint wants to kind of straighten out.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you can use that track gauge and hold it just in perfect radius until you get it spiked in. And if you have to, you can put I've used a little dab of super glue just to hold the rails true. So
Another little trick, talking about track and curves, and one thing there's always techniques I can pick up on along the way with the internet now, but an interesting way to lay curves, like for example in a helix, if you're building a helix or any curve, stagger the rail joints about 2 inches, just like the prototypes are staggered. Don't take two ends and butt them right together. It's like, and I never thought of that, but it's like, it makes so much sense, and your rail joints are going to be smooth on both sides. And now when I lay curves, I stagger my rail joints like that, and it's really a great way to do it. And just cut some ties out and put the ties back in. Your joints are going to be a lot smoother that way.
perfect. Yeah. Yep.
All right, what do you think? Are we ready for another question?
Sure. Let's have a question.
Yes.
All right, let's do one from Jeffrey S. Jeffrey says, my new-to-me train track is 3-rail with black metal cross braces. The prices consists of several turns varying in length and angle. Also a number of straights. A few are about 1 foot, another is about 2 feet, and one more that is 2 to 4. It says inches here. And I also have 2 switches. Apparently there is a left and a right. They look the same to me. Now I would like to get these put together, but I guess you could say I am going in circles. Are there layouts available for this track?
Well, there again, going back to that American Flyer question,
Yes.
that sounds like Lionel.
It does sound 3-rail. Sounds like Lionel.
Yeah, so it's probably Lionel track. I would say if you can find that track planning book, it's hard to find. They call that type of train tin plate now.
Yes.
And it's hard to find that sort of train anymore. But they're great for young kids, and they're big, heavy duty. So I would say if you could find that 101 track plan book online,
that would be good.
and that's probably one of the best sources. I think there are a lot of track plans in there.
Yes. It sure sounds like that's Lionel, though, we're talking.
Yeah.
Yes.
And right-hand switch curves off to the, well, I'm doing it backwards, I guess. Right-hand switch curves off to the right, and the left-hand switch curves off to the left. That's how you tell them apart.
Yes.
All right. Sometimes right and left seems simple, but
Yeah.
that'll get you. Hopefully that's helpful. All right, let's scroll down into our next question here. This is from a guest. What gauge wire would be correct to use for the run from the decoder board area, where the decoders are, to the turnout motors, Pico snap type? My layout is 16 by 4 feet, so no run should be longer than 16 feet. I was wondering what the right gauge would be to be small enough not to be cumbersome, but large enough not to have the wrong amount of resistance.
there's not a lot of current going through wire like for that
Right,
application.
yeah, you can use
so
a pretty small
probably,
gauge
probably
wire.
22.
But the
you get away
longer
with.
distance you go,
You're gonna want it to be more like a
the bigger the
16
wire
gauge.
you need. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I would say generally what I do is I like to use a lighter gauge wire to go up to the layout, just because you don't want a clunky wire showing on top of the layout. So I would run. You could even run, say, an 18 gauge wire up to the underside of the layout under the switch.
Yes.
And then run some, just solder it together and put some shrink tube on it, and then put a short length of maybe 22 gauge wire stranded up to the Pico switch
You
motor.
sure could, because you're not using a long application of current to a switch motor.
Right,
So
right.
you could get away with the smaller gauge.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So longer distances, you want to have
Yes.
a little heavier wire.
All right, hopefully that's helpful as well. Oh, and always keep an eye on your chat box as you're following along. Everybody's really great in this community about crowdsourcing some ideas as well. David Grounds is going back to comment on the brand of the foam that we talked about earlier. He's recommending XPS foam, Owens Corning pink, or Dow blue foam.
Yep.
Always a lot of great conversation that's happening here in these comments. We've got another question coming in from Max K. Hello. I am about to start laying roadbed and flex track for an N scale layout, and I'd like to get some recommendations for which adhesive to use. So far, I've heard of either using DAP or a hot glue gun. What do you recommend for ease and or ability to work with?
Bob?
We were just talking about
Yep.
that it's blue. I just don't remember what it was called, if it was Loctite or, because the DAP, that was another brand I've heard, and basically, yeah, you get your caulk gun and you put a bead down and you use an old putty knife to spread it around, spread it as thin as you can. And that's the latest technique
Putty
for laying
knife.
track.
That's what I use. Putty knife, like that. You can use this for doing plaster scenery too.
But
Yeah.
you're
Artist palette knife.
it's like a PL 200. It might have been Loctite, might have been the brand I used.
I don't know if it really matters so much on
It
the
probably
brand,
doesn't really
but-
matter as long
But
as it's.
for N scale, I was going to say what I do is cut a kind of a small hole in the tip of your, using a caulking gun.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yep.
small hole in the end of the tube.
Right.
Because for N scale, you don't want too big of a
You for
bead. So,
sure are going to spread that out with a
right.
putty
So
knife.
use
though.
a
Yep.
small bead for N scale, and
It's
then
the thinner the better.
there again, you can draw lines. I mean, I would draw,
Right.
if you're laying it on foam, I would draw the center line for the track on the foam.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that way, when you're laying the road bed down, you can just follow that center line and get it exactly right.
Yeah, that makes sense, right?
All right, this is a little bit on the same topic. This is coming in from Edgar J. I believe this is referring to one of the photos you shared earlier, Chooch. You glued
Okay.
the track down with PL 200 only, or did you use track nails too?
Oh, you can, for sure. I use the track nails to hold the track down, and if you want, you could take the track nails out when you're done. It just depends. If it's on a curve, if with flex track, I'm going to put some nails in there to keep it on the correct radius. Straight, yeah, you don't need to use track nails if it's straight, though. That glue will suck those ties right down onto that Woodland Scenics if you're using. It'll make a nice, you don't have to worry about track nails as much then.
All right.
You know what I've used is going into foam, right? What I've used is like a big number 6 finishing nail. And
Okay.
and you can just shove it in
That
with your
finishing
fingers.
nails works perfect, actually.
Shove it in with your fingers and let it stick up, and then that'll hold until the glue's dry, and then it's real easy to just pull them back out of the foam.
Oh, you can see them. They'll be right
Yeah,
there.
they just stick right out of the foam, but I use a bigger nail just so it's easier to pull out.
Yeah, that would work.
Aha. Dale liked the foam scoring tip.
Hey, you want to try it
Good.
again? Want to do it again?
Oh, maybe if we've
Do
got
it
some
again.
time at
Okay.
the end, I'll happily score and break. Some thumbs up for Chooch and Doug. Oh, William Sampson has written in.
Hey, hi, Bill.
Hi,
Yes,
Bill.
Bill.
And his father.
Yep.
Yep,
Bill
William and
says
Bill.
he's known Bob and Doug for years, but
That's true.
never asked either one of you, so here we go. What is your favorite prototype locomotive, model or prototype, and why?
Ooh. Well, I've mentioned
They
mine.
were-
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, I've mentioned mine before. I'm a Southern Pacific guy, and I really like first generation diesels, and I like switching, and so I like actually first generation switchers. And SP, which is normally it would be the Tiger Stripe paint job, But then some of them actually got the kind of what they call the modified Black Widow, kind of a combination of tiger stripe and Black Widow. So that's what I like, and because I've modeled the Southern Pacific my entire life, and I told this story before that when we were kids, I had an uncle out in Oakland. I think maybe you heard this, maybe you didn't. But so we went out with my family. You know, the kids always had to be in the back seat of the car.
Yes,
You know, remember
yes.
that in those days? So anyway, there's no seatbelt probably. So anyway, here we are driving over Donner Pass to go to Oakland. And this was in the old highway before the freeways. And there's the Southern Pacific going over Donner Pass. And I was hooked. That was, yeah, I saw it.
That's neat.
So that I've modeled Southern Pacific ever since. Now, Bob,
Right.
you can tell your story.
Okay, I will, as soon as I can find it here. I was trying to find a picture of my two favorite locomotives, of course, if you're a Sioux-Line fan. They call them the Dolly sisters, the two Elkos.
Oh, well, you look, I'm
Yep.
going to show, here's something else I brought, just another
Oh,
little
okay, do that
funny
while I'm-
little tool. This is a round sponge.
All right. What do
It's
you use
good.
that for?
Well, you know what I use this for primarily? And we're going to be doing a backdrop show here pretty soon. And I use this for painting clouds.
Oh,
I
pretty
use
soft.
acrylic paints, and I have a palette board, and I mix white, light gray, and I use it's called an iridescent white. Different manufacturers call it something different, but it's kind of a sparkly white. And so if you want to get that kind of silver lining on the bottom of a cloud, you know,
Yes.
you can kind of mix the different colors together and then do that little sparkly lining. But I have different shape sponges, but this is my favorite one for doing like cumulus clouds, little kind of soft edges on the clouds. And I do it a little bit at a time. Don't try to do it all at once. Just do a little bit and come back and then keep playing with it.
Ah, really great tool for that.
You still looking, Bob?
Yes, I am, but I almost,
Okay.
I have so many examples here I could show right
This
now.
is my uni bit. Maybe if I hold it like this, it'll show in my hand better. This is a uni bit, drill bit. And it's the doggone handiest tool. It'll go from a 1/8 hole up to a 1/2 inch hole. And so if you want to drill a nice perfect hole, nice clean hole, you know, in the old days you'd keep changing drill bits. You'd start with a small drill bit and then go to a little bigger one, a little bigger one, a little bigger one until you got the hole the right size. But here you can go up to, start with a 1/8 hole, and then it'll stay perfectly on center because this thing is conical, all the way up to 1/2 inch. So,
Fantastic.
yeah, that's a real handy tool.
Well, let me show one of my
Okay, go
favorite
ahead,
Sioux
go ahead.
locomotives. If I pull this up here, Nate, you can take the computer. I think William will approve of my choice here. This
there
is
you go.
the one and only SD9 that the Sioux-Line owned. It was from the old Wisconsin Central. And I'll go to the next one here. That was my shot at Shoreham. There's my model of that engine you just saw. And Sioux-Line fans loved the SD9 because, like I said, it was a one and only. And the other favorite engines for Sioux-Line modelers, of course, would be the Dolly sisters I was talking about.
I like the people you put in that shot.
I've seen that many times. Other modelers have talked about it. It adds so much to a photo. It just adds a little something if you can put people in your shots.
Well, there's a little bit of perspective.
Yes.
You can kind of see size and scale. All right. Oh,
Correct.
Claire Lee had a comment about the sharpening stone that you brought.
Oh,
I think you have to use the sharpening stone wet. Is that something that helps out with that?
well, you can. I mean, that's people will oil them if you're doing something real fancy. If you're a wood carver or something,
Ah,
or
okay.
wood. But I don't. I just want to do it quick. So I take my knife. What did I do with my knife? Here it is. Yeah, I just take my knife and rub it. You could certainly put oil on the block. Otherwise you have to, if I'm right in the middle of something I'm cutting and I'll do this, and go back and cutting, I don't take the time to clean the oil off.
Yes.
So, yes, you are most certainly right. But this works for just a quick job.
All right. And Dwight had commented, it looks like Doug had an X-Acto knife and had a fight, and Doug lost for your finger.
Oh, yeah, well, this is ice.
Turns out,
Minnesota
different
ice.
injury.
One of the hazards living up here. Yeah.
Yes.
Slipped on the ice.
Yep.
A question about your telescoping magnet. Guest is asking, can you get that at car part stores?
That's a good question. certainly, you could certainly try. Or just go online and Google telescoping magnet and see what comes up.
And like you were talking about the Micromark catalog.
Or Micromark.
The flyer,
Services.
yeah. I
You know,
bet you
because
they would have that
If you're
in
going, if you're going behind, behind something, you can tilt the tweak, tweak, tweak. That's
Really
that's pretty
useful.
cool. I was going to show this too. This is my little square, but see the tweak, tweak. So.
Another thing, Doug, we were talking
Oh,
about.
yeah, we
as
didn't
long
show
as
that. This is a modeler square, by the way, which I really
Here,
like.
Doug.
Yep. This is a cardboard fingernail file.
I use that quite often.
And
for-
yeah, I have a whole box of them, and I use these all
Yes.
the time. And they're great. And
I glue
yeah.
I glue on strips of styrene, different sizes of wet, dry sandpaper for various, and I have a whole bin of just those ready to go. And another thing,
Oh, yeah.
I showed this to Doug when I first came in. I said, "What do you think I have that here for, Doug? A cigarette lighter?" Well, believe it or not, for heat shrink tubing, it's perfect. So I don't have an expensive gun sitting there. I just use a cigarette lighter, and it melts it and shrinks it to the correct. Especially now that I'm into the DCC decoder world now.
There you go.
Yes.
And then now here, Leah,
Yes.
that is.
Well, these look like a compass.
Well, it's a dividers,
sorts.
actually, just a dividers. It's got a point on either end.
Okay.
And this is great. This is actually a drafting tool. But you can
Uh-huh.
you can set, say you wanted to measure, say, between here and here, you can set that distance, and then you wanted to measure it over here again, then you can go like this. And if you're doing it in a softer material like plastic or wood, then you can actually take the point and make a little
An indentation.
dent right there, so you can copy that dimension, just
Yes.
as many times as you want.
Oh, Chooch, a question
That's
has come in
perfect.
for you. Again, I think in reference to one of your earlier photos, Dale is asking, how did you create your sand spillage on your track?
Oh, very good question. That was I was, in fact, last night I was using actual weathering chalk pastels, just like a piece of square chalk. You can get artist pastels at art supply stores. And I was using the color white, and I was using my X-Acto blade, and I was just scraping it off into small little containers. And white makes great, and I was just using a brush and applying little piles of sand on top of the rails, and then of course smoothing the rails out so your engines will go through. And because that's how the sand will spill from a sand hose from an engine, and from just putting piles around your sand tower adds so much dimension.
Oh, it really looks good.
To
Yep.
a sand tower scene, yeah.
All right, we have a
Really looks
little
good.
longer than 5 minutes. I've got some
Good.
questions
Okay,
here
let's
to
have
go
questions.
to. Let's see what we can
Okay.
get through. We have a question coming in about HO scale steel mill modeling. Thank you for challenging my Pittsburgh native tongue to say steel mill.
That's very good.
This is a viewer on YouTube. Aside from modeling, love tools that make modeling easier. Pillsbury canned cinnamon roll has a frosting container and lid, both of which
Okay.
could be used for painting. Do you have any experience with that?
That makes sense.
Well, I'm trying to think, I don't remember what this
That looks
was.
similar to what you had
Okay.
pulled out
Yeah,
earlier.
this might be a little takeout cup, but it's kind of the same thing. And then it has a lid. So,
Oh, I like that.
I mix paint or plaster sometimes if I'm coloring up plaster, and then I can cover it up so it won't dry out.
That makes sense. I like
And
that.
I like the clear top because then you can look in there and see what you've got.
That also would be good for your powdered chalks for weathering powders.
And I brought another cup too. This is a yogurt cup, but for bigger things or mixing paint, there you go. This is,
And that might be more similar to the size of that canned cinnamon roll.
and the yogurt just has that paper top on it, so that this one doesn't come with a top. But still, I keep all these little containers because they're so handy for different things. Just about any kind of mixture. And then, like I say, I've used white glue, thinned out white glue, and put it in these and brushed it down.
Awesome.
Nice.
I wanted to show before we run out of time.
Okay.
We got more questions?
We do have a few more, but I think we
Okay.
can.
Well, I just wanted to
Go
show this real
quickly.
quick. This is tin duct tape, actual real tin duct tape that you buy in a home improvement store. with a sticky back. And I've used this for building roofs. I've used this for car roofs.
Okay.
I've used it for building walls. And also on my valance over my layout, where my lighting is, I put it on the back side of my valance as a reflector.
And it reflects the light back to the.
Yeah, and it's got
to the
a,
railroad, I
it's
bet.
sticky, you know, you can pull the
Nice.
backing off it and it's sticky. I wanted to show that before we ran out of time because I think that's a really handy tape.
A unique and useful tool. I like it. Oh, this question comes from Danny. Hello from freezing Quebec.
Aha.
Probably colder than us here.
Colder than we are, okay.
I am planning my N scale layout and I want to have a lot of passenger train. What would be the minimum radius?
I would say, you know, you can use the cars that have the Talgo trucks that swivel, that help. I would say if you could stay in the 20s, it would be really, really good. You know, I mentioned that I'm working with my friend Don in Raleigh, North Carolina on modeling the Chicago Union Station. And he's a passenger train guy. And we've been trying to stay in the 20s as much as possible. If you can make it bigger, even better. But the idea is not only getting the car around the curve, but how does it look?
How does it look?
How does it look going around the curve?
Passenger trains always look better
Yeah.
on a longer,
Yeah.
broader. If you could get to the, you know, like a 30-inch even radius, is
Yeah.
going to look a lot better. And N scale, you have the room to play with too, though, for curves, and you can have your curves be.
Did he
much
say how big a
broader.
layout he's planning on? No?
No
Okay.
commentary on the
So let us know
size.
what you're working on and we'll help you more.
I think we can wrap up with one two-parter question that came in from Jill Burwell. First question is, what is the best method for keeping HO track level on your layout board? And then follow-up is, what wood or et cetera do you recommend for modeling a bridge on an HO track that would be sturdy enough to hold an engine? I'm thinking of making a small or short bridge.
Well, you can certainly use basswood or spruce. I wouldn't use balsa wood. Balsa wood's too soft. But any of the harder woods that you can buy online or a hobby dealer. So basswood's the most common,
Right.
I would say. But then you can use spruce, and then you can actually, if you glue the bridge together, you can also pin it like on a real wood bridge. They would a lot of times they'd have bolts through, so you can
Right.
you
So
can
have the actual bolt. pads.
actually you can buy nut and bolt castings, or you can just use a very small nail like a track nail to simulate that, but actually
Right.
pin it together. So that actually adds to the structure.
Fantastic.
that makes-
Well, are there any closing ideas or things that you want to bring up before we hit the end of our hour? We flew by.
Well, I just didn't get a chance to show everything. This is an automatic center punch, like that.
Oh, okay.
And I use that in harder things, but that's a real handy tool. And then lastly, I had here, this is a double-face carpet tape. And I use this, it's great, it's double face, and if you're putting something big, like if you're attaching, say, a building or something to a backdrop, it's really nice because you can actually, this will really hold. And so this is the package that goes with it, but
Nice and
that's,
sturdy.
that's available at home improvement stores.
Nice.
Did I show everything? I think I showed just about everything
you
I
might
have here.
have.
Toothbrush, I didn't show my toothbrush. Toothbrush.
Toothbrush is good. I don't know if I talked about it, but that's always I use this one all the time also. My handy Moto tool.
We're getting into the
Always
last
easy.
minute things. Pencil sharpener shavings for a carload, a chip carload, or around a lumber mill. These came right out of my pencil sharpener. And I sift them and then use them for, like I say, for either a load or around a lumber mill, sawmill.
Useful way to
Yep.
use all of those
So-
shavings.
I think I caught most everything now.
Yes. Well, before we say goodbye, just a reminder, again, you can contribute to the community gallery by adding your layout. If you're watching on Facebook, the link is in the description. Otherwise, it's in the chat box underneath the video. Make sure to share all of your layouts. That's really great community building. And of course, follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, and Instagram, Model Railroad Academy. Without further ado, we've got Chooch Rivard, Doug Hodgdon, I am Leah. Until the next time, this has been Track Talk Live.